So what are you doing to prepare for food shortages? So today we're going to talk about ways that you can raise, grow, or even trade for food when times get tough. We're going to get into all these things, but in order to find out more, you got to stay tuned. Well, hey everybody, welcome back to Cattywampus Acres. It's Jason. We love having you here, and we want to hear more from you. So please, at some point while you're watching this video, give us a comment down below. If you like the video, give us a like, and if you haven't subscribed yet, well, hey Steven, if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider hitting that subscribe button and the bell notification so you can keep up to date with everything we're doing on the farm. Apparently, Steven's wanting to join us for this video. If you don't have a barn cat, get a barn cat. They're awesome. Ain't that right? And say, nobody adopts black cats. And so that's why I'm here. That's why Steven and Hulk are here. And they're awesome. Never liked cats before these two. I digress. So first things first, let's talk about what a food shortage actually is. And I looked it up, but what it basically talks about is when food supplies are in short supply in a certain area and they don't provide the energy and nutrition that's needed for the people in that area. So the question arises, are we actually in a food shortage right now? I think some would maybe say yes. I certainly think there's some people in the United States that are food insecure, and I don't really think that's changed as of late. There's been a lot of people that are food insecure, and that can be due to poverty levels and things of that nature. And that's something that we've been dealing with, and I know our family, we try to help with that as much as possible in our community when we see issues like that. I think if you've been to a grocery store lately, you know that we've been experiencing some kind of food shortages. And the question arises also from that is, are these food shortages created, or are they just natural from something? So let's talk about some things that I know. Fertilizer costs has been on the rise. Used to just be a few $100 per ton when you were getting fertilizer to fertilize hay fields and things of that nature. Hay fields are what we need to provide certainly for our animals here, our dairy animals, dairy cows and even beef cows and many other animals. And also, even if you're a vegetarian or vegan or anything and you don't eat these kind of things that we eat here or drink, you certainly are going to deal with this on a large scale, because there's no way that everything that you're eating is untouched by fertilizer, because they would not be able to feed the country on solely unfertilized crops. It's great, and it works in your backyard a lot, and it works to feed smaller groups of people, but it does not work to feed 300-400 million people. There's also been reports of farmers being paid to destroy their crops, and that is really unfortunate. And I know here we don't like seeing anything go to waste. I hate to see it, especially when I know the hard work that goes into growing any kind of growing out an animal or any kind of fruit or vegetable. It's horrible to think that you would just pay somebody to destroy it. But no matter what it is, if you go to the store, food costs more, and it is in shorter supply here in the United States. So as homesteaders, the next thing we need to talk about are, what are you doing for your family to take care of this kind of situation? Are you growing food that you can actually barter with? Because that's what we're actually talking about today, is bartering food. So here we've raised pork, pigs. We've raised pigs for pork. We don't raise beef yet. It's something we're going to definitely do in the future, but we have friends that raise beef. That gets into that whole bartering situation. We've always raised chickens. We've raised meat chickens, and we always have layer chicken. This time of year, it is the eggs are in short supply because all the chickens are molting. Yet another thing that we need to be prepping for. Do you have a vegetable garden? Whether it be, a few square feet that you can supplement a little bit, or you have massive gardens. Like we have several gardens here, but we're certainly still not providing all the vegetables that we need for our family, and that's because we are just in our first few years of really learning how to grow vegetables really well. And fruit is another thing. Do you have orchard? Do you have just one or two trees? And certainly in like a prepping situation, or any kind of crap hits the fan kind of situation, in those kind of situations you're not going to care quite as much about a wide selection of fruit. But during homesteading, it certainly helps with your diet if you're able to sort of mix it up a little bit with what you have. Here we have apples, we have pears, we have plums, peaches, figs, berries, persimmon, all kinds of stuff. And that is all in just a small area that's actually just right across from me here. So even if you don't have a large homestead, you can certainly, even in a neighborhood, depending on what your rules or regulations are, you can grow a lot of your own food. And I would encourage you, certainly encourage you to do that. That's really what a lot of our channel's about. So the next question that comes up is, if I can't grow some of these things, what can I do about that if these are things that I want to have? Well, you can buy them in bulk. And so we don't raise rice here. There's a lot of grain that we don't grow here. We grow corn, but not in huge supply. So I would recommend, if you're doing a preparation kind of thing for grains, certainly go start buying large quantities of rice and flour and things of that nature. And those are things that will be really good to barter in a situation for things that you may not have. So what kind of examples can I give here? We raise pork, and we do it quite often. We've been doing it, over the past couple years consistently, and we have hundreds of pounds of pork stored up. But I don't have any beef. I don't have any rice. I don't have any flour that we grow here. Well, we have friends who don't have pork and maybe want that kind of thing. So that's a situation where we can trade now and deal with those kind of situations now. We can use some currently for our homesteading end of things, and then we can also store some of that stuff away, and we'll talk about that in a minute, for like a prepper kind of situation. Well, we've moved inside for the next portion of this video because I sort of wanted to show you one of the ways that we preserve food. This is our Harvest Right freeze dryer, and we've had this for not quite a year yet. It was a huge investment, don't get me wrong at all, but we have loved having it, and especially good for preservation. So preservation is important for homesteading and prepping, no matter what you're doing, whether you're trying to store stuff long term or if you need it maybe a month from now or something like that. For instance, we freeze dried some strawberries, and we've eaten those a few times that we haven't had any strawberries to eat that were fresh. When I tell you they're delicious, they're amazing. Can't say enough about them. Freeze drying is definitely a way to do your preservation for preps or for current food storage. Like I said, not everybody's going to be doing this. This is several $1,000s. It's not for everybody. It's certainly not anything that we treat lightly. It's definitely a big investment, but it's for our future. So recently we had an experience that I want to talk about using our freeze dryer when some friends of ours did not have a freeze dryer. So these friends of ours wanted some eggs freeze dried so they could store those long term and use them pretty easily if they're just out and about. Well, they also had, the husband had just actually harvested a deer, or maybe a couple deer, I don't know, and he was able to basically trade some of that venison for using our freeze dryer. So we were able to stock up on some venison without me even going out in the woods and falling asleep in a tree stand. And in return, we got them some very shelf-stable eggs. So some of the stuff we freeze dried is like this squash and zucchini, for example. We grew this year in our garden, and this stuff is good if you season it, and you can just eat it like you would like potato chips kind of thing. But also you can reconstitute this and cook it up with a fat or water or anything like that. So this is good calories that can be stored. And if you see in there's a, I don't know if you can see that, there is a oxygen absorber in there. And this stuff will be shelf stable for 20 or more years. So that's pretty awesome. So this could be long-term storage, or if we need it right now, we could use that. Here is some eggs we've done. I have the clip on here because I've been using them, because our chickens, I believe as I mentioned earlier, are not laying right now because they're molting. And so if you look in there, that is freeze-dried eggs, and this will hold, oh geez, I think we put like 3 dozen eggs in this thing. And all I do when I want to make some eggs, I take a couple scoops and mix some water with them, throw it in the pan, and you got perfect scrambled eggs. And I'm not lying when I say there's hardly a difference from fresh. I don't even think most people would even notice. But this isn't for everybody. Very expensive. Long term, it's very good, and it doesn't really change the nutritional value, which is really awesome, but definitely not for everybody. The next thing is canning, and we don't can as much as I'd like to, but this is a good example of some canning. This is actually from our friends over at Perry Hill Farm. Make sure you check them out. And this is some salsa, which is delicious, by the way. And this is another good example of bartering. When we were at the Gulf Coast Homesteaders meetup this past week, we actually traded them for some salsa and fig jam for some of our soap. They had their heart set on some soap, so we did a little swap, and that is a modern barter that we are both going to use our stuff right away, and we don't have to worry about. It's not necessarily for prepping or anything like that. Obviously, for prepping, you're going to want to do larger quantities and store them up. But the one thing about canning is it does add salts or sugars or both to whatever you're eating, and so that does change the nutritional value just a little bit. So that's just something to remember. If you're in like a prepping situation, it's not going to be that big a deal because chances are you're only going to be eating about 1,000 calories or so anyways, and so that would not be a concern. Plus, if you don't know, salt is really good for you. Make sure you, if you're interested in using some real salt, go check out that link down below, and it'll take you to their site. The next thing is dehydration. Dehydration, a lot of us are familiar with that. What we mainly use it for is herbs, sometimes fruit, but mainly beef jerky. Being that I have been doing the carnivore thing for a while now, I really like the jerky. It's nice to be able to throw it in my car and eat it wherever. It does mess with the nutritional value a little bit, but I mean, who doesn't love jerky? Let's just be honest, it's amazing. But yeah, there's many uses for dehydration, and it can store, depending on your oxygen and moisture levels and stuff like that, you can store for a really long time. And storage space is important, and so when we're talking about bartering, you want to make sure that when you're bartering with somebody, you don't want to like trade them for something with like botulism in it or anything like that, or anything that's gone rotten. And so make sure you have a storage area where you can store this stuff for long term, for prepping and all that other stuff, just in case you need to swap. And it would make sure that there's not much light in there, not high moisture or anything like that. So I've been going back and forth a little bit in this video talking about homesteading and prepping. The thing that I want you to realize, the difference between the two is homesteading, in my opinion, is basically sustaining yourself and your family right now, opposed to prepping, which is being prepared for a crap hits the fan kind of situation down the road, and so you have food or whatever stored up just in case something goes sideways and there's like basically no way for you to just go to a store and get that stuff. Either way you're doing it, bartering is a really good thing and can be used for either one. And what might be valuable for you now might be valuable for somebody else in the long run, or vice versa. And the one thing we always talk about in our videos is between homesteaders, preppers, or anything like that, make sure you have a strong community. That's a big part of bartering, because you just don't want to go barter with some random Joe Blow down the street or anything. Yeah, I mean, there's many reasons. Security reasons are one of them. If you don't know them, then what are you going to do about that? Like you don't know how this was prepared, how it was prepped, how anything like that. But for instance, when we butchered a couple hogs some months back, we had fellow homesteaders come over and help us, and in turn they got pork to take home with them. But now we're sitting on hundreds of pounds of pork that we can use at any time. We can freeze dry it, we can dehydrate, we can keep it in the freezer, and we can use it for those purposes. So that part's really awesome, and that is how we work together with our community. We knew each one of them, they're all friends of ours, and we barter things all the time. One of our bucks, Mr. Miyagi, was just out, and we'll trade something for him. We trade in the animal stuff and barter with the animals. We barter with services, like sometimes we will need like a trailer or space to store something or whatever the case may be. All these things are bartering, and all of them can be used for your needs and your community. But the most important thing in all that is that you have a strong community with like-minded people who are able to trade with you and basically make sure you have safe things, and you're ready for now. If there's any food shortages right now, if you're unable to get something now, or down the road, if something bad happens and everything goes sideways and you need help down there. Because I'll tell you right now, your homestead and prepping friends are going to be really close if something really goes sideways. All in all, you just have to determine what you need now. If you consider us on a food shortage now, what you need now, what you can't get at the store, or what is ungodly expensive at the store, and or what you're going to need down the road for preps or anything like that. In a SHTF kind of situation, what you're going to need for those. And so, many things: water, grain, meat, fruit, vegetables. All these things are things to think about and things you can barter with. Our soap. We use our soap to barter quite a bit. We trade with our soaps a lot because we have a lot of friends who do a lot of things that we do not do. And so it's nice to be able to work together and have that. And you may have friends with ammo. You may have friends that can knit blankets or make clothing and stuff like that. All these things are good things to barter with for now and for the future. Well, thank y'all so much for hanging out with us. We really enjoy, being around with y'all and communicating with y'all, and because you guys have really good ideas and we can bounce stuff off each other. Remember, if you've never tried bartering before, certainly give it a go. That's one thing that really doesn't have a lot to do with inflation or any of the stuff we're dealing with currently. And because my food and my food supply and a lot of these things doesn't go up and down with the market. That stays the same. Remember what we always say here: when you homestead, you're home fed. Check out Cattywampusacres.com for amazing soaps. Other than that, we'll see you guys next time.
Waking up this morning, waking up before it's getting night.